Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Emily Rao with ABC News Live, and we are here today to have a conversation with the folks from ADAPT to talk about everything that happened yesterday with the Senate Health Bill and the fallout from it so far. So a lot of you know and saw the video of all the protests on Capitol Hill, people being carried out and arrested. We have some of those folks who were arrested right here with us. So I want to take you around the circle as we sort of start up this conversation. As I mentioned, everybody here is involved with the ADAPT organization, really a grassroots, and I'll have you explain this better for me in a minute, group that's fighting for rights of those who are disabled. So we're going to get to chat with all of these people here. And I want to start with you, Bruce, and if you could just introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit more about ADAPT. And to start off, you were one of the folks that were arrested yesterday.
Yes, I was. I was arrested yesterday, and I'm an organizer with ADAPT.
Okay.
So one of the national organizers, and ADAPT is a national grassroots group community of activists who are working to end the institutional bias and ensure that all Americans with disabilities have the right to live in the community and have the same access to liberty and life that is promised under the Declaration of Independence and guaranteed under the Constitution. We were founded in 1983
Wow.
to put lifts on buses, and I joined the group in 1986 to fight to put lifts on buses in Rochester, New York.
Wow.
So in 1990, when we got the ADA, we pivoted from fighting to get lifts on buses to fighting to ensure that we were all free.
And now, why is this issue, this latest bill from the Senate, why was this one of those, hands down, we're going to be out there, we're going to organize something?
Well, okay, so the thing that underpins our right to live in the community is Medicaid. It pays for the services and supports we need. So when you think about life and liberty, the medications we use to stay alive are paid for by Medicaid. The durable medical equipment we use, like the wheelchairs and scooters and such, come to us from Medicaid. The personal assistance services, the people who help get us out of bed, into bed, toilet, eat, all of those tasks, that's all paid for by Medicaid. So when people hear that the Senate is wanting to cut Medicaid by billions and billions of dollars, they're concerned literally for their lives and their freedom. So that's why we felt like it was important to put our bodies on the line, because our lives are literally on the line.
Yeah, and I'll go to you, Kings, to explain more about that. I want to know about your experience yesterday, if you don't mind just sort of walking us through it. It sounds like it was quite the day for you all.
Sure. So Raquel and I walked to the Metro around 9. We got there at about 10. There were a bunch of us that were organized outside. We met everyone in Upper Senate Park, and we kind of split off into two groups, and we went in through two different entrances of the Dirksen Senate building.
Dirksen and Hart.
Yeah, Dirksen and Hart. Okay. So we were all kind of meeting in front of Mitch McConnell's office, and we had what was called a die-in, where it's people with disabilities are literally dying because their services are going to be or have been taken away. And so there were 43 of us arrested yesterday, and we all organized outside of Mitch McConnell's office, went into his office, laid on the ground, and things started picking up. Media started arriving.
You were all the way in his office.
I was directly outside of his office, immediately to the left.
Wow.
I was one of the people, I do have a larger scooter, so I was told to block the door. No one can get in, no one can get out. We are a peaceful organization, so we don't believe in violent action, so it was a non-violent arrest. We don't resist, but we don't help them arrest us either. But we were arrested and held for, I think, a little over 10 hours in the Capitol Police building without accessible bathrooms, which was really unfortunate. But it was an incredible experience, and I think it's gotten people's attention that people with disabilities are going to die if we don't change a lot of the drafts that are in the bill right now.
Yeah, what did that feel like when you all were arrested? I mean, did you assume that that's what would happen?
Oh yes, I think going into that, you get preempted to say, do you want to be arrested or not? And it is an active choice, and you say yes or you say no. And normally the first call for arrest, like we are about to arrest you, the people who don't want to be arrested leave, and those are normally our victors who work on media, who work on getting everyone out of prison or jail afterwards. But at the same time, it is a choice. You say, okay, we are willing to be arrested for our freedom, for the rights of people with disabilities, in the U.S. and then globally.
And we actually had explicit conversations about who could get out of their chairs, get on the ground, who felt that that would be safe, because we didn't want anyone to sustain, no reason to go sustain serious injury.
Sure.
So we have people who are frail physically, who could experience real harm. So those folks tended to stay in their chairs, but other folks made the decision to go to the ground and be basically dragged out by the police.
Wow. Very powerful images that came out of that protest. Did you imagine that it would get to, and you, Kara, were in charge of the social media aspects of it, as you saw these pictures and the videos and you all were experiencing it, did you expect it to get to that level?
Not at all. I don't know what anybody else expected. I knew that we were going to get media coverage. I knew that Bruce especially was hoping for, he said before we all gathered, he was saying, oh, we're going to get New York Times. Finally, we're going to get New York Times. And I think we did get New York Times. But I was running the social media all day for the DC Metro chapter of ADAPT, which is the chapter that I'm involved in. And it just came pouring in, all the media coverage, all the tweets, all the Facebook posts. I took a picture of activist Dawn Russell, one of our adapters who was arrested, and I took a picture of her on the lift going into the police bus with her fist raised in power, and I just quickly snapped the photo, wasn't even thinking, and slapped it up on the DC Metro Twitter. And as of about 20 minutes ago, it had over 6,000 retweets, over, I think it was 3,000 likes, something incredible like that. So I knew we were going to get media coverage, but to this extent, I had no idea.
We did expect, though, that we would be dragged. I mean, you go into someone's office.
Right.
Basically, you're going to be arrested. You get out of your chair and you're laying on the floor, or you're just laying on the floor. You're going to be dragged out. So we knew that that was going to happen, personally. So that's why we had conversations with folks, and we made intentional decisions about that.
And it was organized.
Yeah.
And it was,
in a sense.
it was very organized. Actually,
very organized.
yeah, no, we put a lot of people underestimate us because we're people with disabilities.
Really?
We put a lot of thought into these actions, into how they work and how they play out. So this was actually a very thoughtful plan that was developed in short order, about a day in terms of the logistics, but it was brilliantly executed by a group of disciplined people with disabilities.
The one thing that we didn't actually plan was the draft of the bill came out the same day that we were planning this action. And so just by serendipity, we planned this event, in advance, and it's just the timing was absolutely impeccable in that regard.
So let's get into that a little bit more. Tell me about your experience, what you've read in the bill, and what specifically concerns you the most.
I'm definitely going to defer to Bruce for more of the
We'll talk about the impact of Medicaid cuts.
Okay, so I personally don't have Medicaid, but I use personal care assistant services. So people help me get out of bed in the morning. They help me get dressed, toileting, getting food, all of these things that I need to work and live independently. I have a job, I have an apartment, I pay for both of those, but it's something that I need to depend on. If these cuts are put in place, there is already a shortage of personal care assistants, not only in DC, but just nationwide in the United States. And so all of these people who are receiving these services will lose their coverage. The people who are giving the coverage will lose their jobs. And people with disabilities will be moved into nursing homes, which is not only more expensive, but it completely limits our freedom. It traps us because we don't have the social lives, we don't have the employment lives, we don't have our personal lives that we have access to anymore because we're institutionalized.
Very interesting. And Raquel, you are an intern for the summer, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you said something that really stuck with me before, just as we were walking in. I said, wow, it must have been a crazy couple of days, and you said these have been the best days of your life. Tell me about that. That's a very powerful thing to say, and why do you feel so strongly about it?
So I've only been with Nicole since about June 5th, which is only about
Less than a month or so.
Less than a month or so. And every single day has just been filled with such adventure and such passion, and And like the day before ADAPT, I got to see Bernie Sanders and people who are really trying to advocate for the healthcare bill not to pass, which is something really important to me, because if this is passed, my brothers and sisters with disabilities will die. It's not a question, it's not just something I mean, people will die if this is passed, and that's what really drove me to participate in this. And
do you think that what you guys organized yesterday, what do you expect to be the outcome of that? I mean, do you consider it, we reached our goal, our work here is done, or what's next for all of you guys?
I think it's greater awareness, and I think we're getting that to some extent with all the media coverage, but what I'm seeing, you know, as I'm running DC Metro ADAPT social media and as I'm looking on my personal social media, I'm seeing a lot of outrage that, you know, oh, how could the police do this to people with disabilities? It's very much positioning people with disabilities in a place of vulnerability, you know, implying that, you know, we're weak and that it's somehow more unjust for police to be violent against people with disabilities than it is for people without disabilities. And I think a lot of people are missing the larger point, which is the whole reason we did this action was because we're protesting against this healthcare bill because this is our lives on the line. Our lives are very literally on the line. Our lives, our freedom, our livelihoods, our ability to work, our ability to afford the medications and durable medical equipment like wheelchairs and scooters that we need. You know, if you want to be outraged at somebody, please be outraged at the politicians who are writing this bill, who are going to try and pass this bill, who are voting for this bill. Please contact your senators and tell them not to vote for this bill.
How would it affect you personally, if you don't mind sharing?
For me, I'm like Kings. I do not currently use Medicaid. I am exploring the option of buying into Medicaid. I'm currently ensnarled in the process of trying to get off Social Security benefits and Medicaid because now that I'm working full-time, I've been working for the National Council on Independent Living full-time since January, and because I work full-time and I don't need personal care attendants, I have the luxury of not needing those services. So I'm trying to get off SSI, and they're making it very complicated for me. But I am looking into the option of a Medicaid buy-in as soon as I am done dealing with the bureaucracy of SSI, because private insurance does not cover durable medical equipment like my scooter. I am fortunate that my parents are middle class and we didn't have a ton of money growing up, but we were in a position that we were able to, my first scooter I got when I was 16 years old, and that was paid for by a local charity in my hometown on Long Island. So we are very grateful for that. And then when I got the job here, my last scooter was 8 years old, it was falling apart, and my parents said, we don't feel comfortable having you move 4 hours away with a scooter that's this old. So they actually bought this scooter for me out of pocket. But as I grow older, my disabilities are changing, my muscles are changing, my bones are changing. I have more complicating conditions on top of my physical disability, and I'm really starting to need a wheelchair that has more support, that's more durable. So that's an option I need to look into in the next couple of years, but private insurance will not pay for that, especially for me, because I do not need a wheelchair in the house. I can walk in the house. And for some crazy reason, insurance thinks that if you don't need a wheelchair in the house, you don't need a wheelchair at all, because, you know, if I didn't have a wheelchair, I wouldn't be able to be here. I wouldn't be able to live on my own. I wouldn't be able to go to work. I wouldn't be able to work full time. I wouldn't be able to socialize because my ability to walk is very limited and my balance is very tricky.
And I think it's helpful to highlight, so some people may not understand exactly how people will die because of this.
Yes,
so when you
to that point, a lot of people are saying, well, this is dramatization, people are just blowing this out of proportion, this needs to go back to a states issue. There are many people on the other side who say this is not the case. So
okay, so and we can tell you that it is the case because Medicaid has been cut at the state level for a good number of years now. So when you reduce attendance services, so at a point where a person is going to go into an institution, the last thing they want is to go into an institution. So folks say they'll figure out how to do it on their own, but they figure it out by going without the personal assistance they need, which means they get pressure sores or decubiti that become infected. They get urinary tract infections and go septic, which means they go into the hospital, which creates costs as well, but they die. So people with disabilities die from those secondary conditions because they don't get the care they need. And then they may go into the hospital. Some of them may be forced into institutions. But one of the dirty little secrets that we don't talk about is people don't get the same care that they would get in the community, and they're more likely to die more quickly in those institutions. So it's not just our lives that we're fighting for in terms of our opportunity to get education, have a career, have a family, have a life, pursue happiness. It's our literal lives because people will die. And we see this now. We see people who struggle to get into the Medicaid system who can't navigate that what we just talked about here. They have trouble getting into the Medicaid system. They go without assistance, and then they end up dying during that process. So that's why this is so visceral for us, because there's very clear paths that take us to death.
And even broadening out the scope of this a little bit, you guys are very involved, very organized. You have chapters all over the country, from what I understand. But just generally speaking, there are so many millions of Americans who are fed up with this situation, with this town where we are right now, and with this whole healthcare situation, and they feel overwhelmed and just don't know what to do. It's obviously very personal for all of you folks, but what do you say to those Americans who just say, I might as well not even get involved because I can't make a difference, I can't have any effect?
Well, we were arrested on the anniversary of Justin Dart's death. Justin Dart was, I would say, the spiritual leader of our movement.
Yes.
And he inspired us to get involved in politics as if our lives depended on it, because they do. So for us to be arrested on that day, fighting to get into politics, is, I think, a message that everyone can learn from, not just the disability community. Because whether you have a disability now, personally, you will have a family member who will be impacted on this. So many people use Medicaid services. I think it's like 49% of all births are funded by Medicaid. So many people with disabilities and elderly people use Medicaid services. We talk about home and community-based services, but nursing facilities are paid for by Medicaid as well. Not the choice we would want to make, but those are all things that are paid for. When those dollars are restricted, you're going to be pitting all of these groups of people against each other. So we will have, poor people trying to fight to make sure that they can get the care for their children, with disabled people who are trying to live in freedom, with elderly people who are concerned about nursing facility and institutional care. So all of us are going to be pitted against each other. And it's a really twisted version of the Hunger Games, basically to give a tax break to the super wealthy in this country. I think the people who framed the Constitution would be appalled at what's happening in this conversation right now.
And at the same time, when people aren't getting services, it drives up the need to push yourself to a point where you are in an emergency room. And these could easily be solved. Pressure sores can be cured. UTIs, you can get antibiotics for these types of things that, if you're taken proper care of, there's no need to go to a hospital or an emergency room. But you push people to these limits and they end up in the emergency room, which not only drives up costs, but more people are dying because they're waiting till the last minute to get health and care because they are afraid and rightfully so, that they don't have the services that they need.
So tell me about your next week. The politicians have said they want to move fast on this, that things could happen very quickly. So what's next? What's the plan for you all? Are we going to see more protests and demonstrations?
Well, we were, yeah, absolutely.
Raquel says yes, and I will be there.
Yeah.
I think we all will.
So chapters are talking. So folks have gone back home from, or are in the process of going back home, and we're looking to do local actions in our senators' offices back home. So we're talking to folks in various states, Pennsylvania, Colorado, who are engaged with their senators to try to move this process forward. And basically, we want to hold them accountable to vote no on a bill that is going to steal the lives and liberty of disabled Americans.
Do you all have hope at this point when it's so divided and so partisan?
I think you have to have hope. I mean, I'm as cynical as they come, but I think if we don't have hope, all is lost. If we don't have hope, we might as well just give up right now, and that's not going to happen.
And if we didn't have hope, we wouldn't have gone and arrested.
You are here today now because we made a story and we made it happen, and we're trying to get the issue out. So, from 24 hours ago, to right now, it just pushes you along a little bit more and a little bit more. And so, not only do I think we have hope, but we have resilience that we can make a difference.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Do you think it needed to get to that level? Now, did I correctly see that you tweeted that the blood came from you that was outside?
Oh, wow, yeah, very cool.
Yes.
Yes, actually, not the blood part, but the fact that you saw the tweet.
Yes.
No, that was my blood.
What happened? Can you share?
When they went to, basically, I was on the floor. When they went to pull me out, apparently my head, we had a lot of things coming out of that. So they lifted me up and basically it was banged around.
Okay.
So I believe my head hit a foot pedal or a control box. I don't know what it hit, but I ended up, they cut my head and I was bleeding. So that was my blood. I literally bled on the floors of Congress to stop this.
Wow, and you're okay.
I'm okay, yes.
Okay.
So,
Are you unhappy with the level that it got to with police?
we knew that, okay, so going into this, we knew that this was a possibility, but we put our bodies on the line because our lives are on the line, and we're going to defend, our siblings in the movement and in the community. We have no option but to do that, because frankly, that's what Americans do. When life and liberty is threatened, they fight back. It's just, we're needing to fight back against the people in government.
That's how we work. That's how our society works. And at the same time, we are some of the more active members who are fighting for our more disabled citizens who are in nursing homes, who can't make it to these actions because they don't have the PCA support, because they don't have the financial support, because they are trapped in their homes and in institutions.
So, after the protest, it was so cool because it actually, felt like a family. I was one of those people who decided not to be arrested and just kind of, make sure that everyone was okay. And it really did, seem like a family. One of the chants that I hope that my brothers and sisters heard while they were in jail was free my family, because and yesterday it really did seem like we were all a family, and I felt like I knew these people for my entire life.
Wow, very powerful. I think that's a good place to wrap this up. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, and people will be tuning in to see and hear more from all of you and from the ADAPT organization. So thank you, and we will sign off for ABC News Live. Thanks, guys.